Well, good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. We have a great webinar on tap today. I am so excited about this webinar. But before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded. So if you miss any or all of the event, you will have the opportunity to listen to it, watch it later on today or in the future. Following today's webinar, we are going to be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's webinar you have a question for any of our very smart panelists, please don't wait, don't hesitate, just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your questions. And hopefully we'll have about 10-15 minutes near the end of today's webinar and to go through those audience questions. And also at the end of today's webinar, we are doing a drawing for 3 $50 Amazon gift cards. So please stick around. Hopefully you will be one of our 3 lucky winners. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is Value Stream Management, the what and why. This is obviously a panel discussion with some very smart guys, and so excited to have them here today. We have, as our very smart panelists, first of all, Bob Davis, who is the CMO at Platora. Bob, thanks so much for joining me today. Glad to have you here.
I am excited for today, Charlene. Thanks for having me.
All right, great, thanks. Steve Boone, also welcome to the webinar. Steve is head of product management at HCL Urban Code. So thank you, Steve, for joining me today. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Charlene. It's an honor, really, to be with these guys, and excited to have some good talks.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Great. Well, our final panelist today is the one and only Eric Robertson, who is VP of Product Marketing Management at CollabNet version 1 Zedia Labs. Hey, Eric, thank you so much for joining me today. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Charlene, for you and DevOps for hosting, and I am honored also to be part of this esteemed panel.
All right, great, great. Well, I think I've said it before, but I'm really excited about today's webinar, partly because it is based on an ebook that we just put out on DevOps.com. Value Stream Management Comes of Business Age. It is, as I said, it's available on DevOps.com, and everybody who registered for today's webinar is going to be receiving a copy of it. So please take a look in your email. Hopefully should be there already, a link to access the ebook for you. And with that, I want to get into the webinar, but first of all, we actually have a couple polling questions. And if I can get to them here, I'm going to push out the first poll here. We'll do these polling questions and then we'll get right into the discussion. There we go. Okay, I have a bit of a lag on my internet. I apologize for that. But here's the first of 2 polls. What is your biggest DevOps struggle today? You can select from alignment between development initiatives and business goals, shifting governance, security, or quality left, culture, communication, and collaboration, or finding ways to move faster or more efficiently. So go ahead and make your choice, and we'll give this a couple more seconds, and then we'll set out our second poll, and then we'll get on with the discussion. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this one in 3, 2, 1. Thanks so much for taking part in the first poll, and here's the second poll. I'm launching it right now. Like I said, I got the lag. Quick poll. Okay, are you facing any of these challenges in your organization? Scaling Agile across our organizations, connecting Agile planning to DevOps strategic value delivery, no high-level visibility into disparate teams and tasks, organizational and metric misalignment impacting collaboration, and poorly integrated tool chains. So go ahead and make your choice, like I said. And then once we get enough responses, we'll go ahead and close this out, and then we'll start in on our discussion. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and close this one out in Oh, we still have lots of people voting, so here we go. Okay, all right, going ahead and closing it now. All right, guys, thanks for bearing with me there with that. So let's go ahead and kick off our discussion now. I think it's always good if we start with the basics when we're talking about pretty much anything, just to kind of set the stage, if you will. And I guess the best way to start with this one is, what exactly is value stream management? And as I know that there's always a general idea that people have about value stream management, what they think it is, but it isn't always open to interpretation. So, Steve, what are you hearing? What do you when you hear value stream management, what is it that you think of?
Yeah, well, it's a really good question, because we're early in this market, and I think that's a definition that's definitely taking shape. When we're communicating about it with our customers, and the things that we're trying to help folks get and latch onto is having a way of visualizing your ideas, right? Your actual business value that you're trying to bring through, not only through your organization, but you want to bring to your customers. And so when we talk about DevOps, we often talk about wanting to make work visible. And I think that one of the really cool opportunities that we have in value stream is actually to make that work visible. So from the moment we have an idea we actually deliver something tangible to our customers, how can we track that? How do we understand where it gets held up? And start thinking about delivering software in more of a broader thing than just our small scope of app dev, right? When we talk about bottlenecks, we tend to think about bottlenecks of, oh, well, you must not be doing deployment automation, or maybe you need test automation or security or monitoring. The majority of customers today are already doing things like that, right? Most companies in general are doing those best practices. So think about making work visible. I think that's one of the key ones. And then there's a whole lot of opportunity around understanding the difference between planned work and unplanned work. So what are we doing? How do we make sure that the work that our development teams are putting forth and the effort we're putting forth is aligned to our overall business goals from the top down? And once we can start to visualize where that work is and move it around, I think it allows for us to embrace some of the culture and challenges that we have, actually have honest conversations about it, right? Empathy is a key word that comes to mind when I think of value stream.
That's a good one.
Software development.
That. Yeah.
Well, I mean, software development in general is hard, right? And
right.
I feel like there's so much pressure on IT and application teams to be fast and agile, and it's often the rest of the business that's very slow. And so how do we communicate as an organization to everybody else that says, I need your help, whether it's modernizing your processes, modernizing the way that you think about governance and approvals. We need to start working together and be the quote unquote village that raises the kid, if the kid is DevOps in a sense, and start enabling everybody to really work together to get the software out and know where that kind of communication ends and the handoffs begin. And so that's what we talk about, right? And I think there's just loads of opportunity for us in this space.
That's a good point. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I would agree with all that. I think those are the framework, the hallmarks of value stream management. I would add that from my perspective, it all starts with the customer. The businesses that we have out there are in the business of delighting their customers, and that's become a much more complex affair these days with mobile, with web, with instant satisfaction and the desire for people to really be excited about using the services, even if it's an insurance company or a bank or something that we've often thought of as legacy established business, not a lot of sexiness there. The success of those companies is now a function of how well they're delivering value to the customer. And that has accelerated the need to do development, and that has complicated the overall processes in these very large, very significantly dependent value chains. So the visibility that Steve talked about is the notion of having visibility into that complicated process so that I can be sure that I'm delighting my customers. And these days, if I don't do that, I go out of business, or I become very late to the party with applications. And my favorite example of that is Venmo. I mean, if I'm sitting there and I'm a major bank, it was almost 10 years before the banks were able to respond and deliver the kind of flexibility associated with Venmo, and everybody's using it now. I can imagine there are development offices in those financial institutions that are scratching their heads going, wow, how did that happen?
Right.
And Zelle has come out, it's coming on, but that's a great example of large, consistent legacy businesses losing competitive advantage and customer traction by virtue of not developing and not seeing the customer needs clearly enough to be able to bring that back to their development.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'd like to definitely add on to that. What we're seeing in the market is definitely the shift of the operating model in IT from the alignment around systems to alignment with value streams within the business, right? And to go to Steve and Bob's point, you're now starting to see these cross-functional teams pulling together, working on being able to prioritize journeys and initiatives to deliver on that value stream. And Steve mentioned empathy. Another one that's missing that I like to add is trust as well, especially what we're seeing right now in the industry. So being able to ensure that what I deliver to my customers is also a trusted entity as well. It's secured as well. My data is secured. My application is secured, because any type of impact to that application impacts my value, impacts my IP. That's what's being delivered in the organization as well. So being able to ensure and be able to track, map, visualize, measure, and govern, and then optimize not only the development value stream, but also the operational, the business value stream, make sure they're aligned to ensure that I just having continuous delivery to customers.
Well, that's a lot. I got to tell you, you think of value stream management as, just like one general concept, but it's really, really fascinating to hear how different businesses are kind of thinking about it. But the one thread that seems to run through all of it is customers. Keep making sure that the customers have what they need, and their experience is top notch. So that's I guess at the end of the day, that's it's all about making the customers happy. So and when we're talking about just software development in general, but when we're talking about them in the context of other things like life in general, let's talk maybe COVID-19. Let's talk about how value stream management impacts business. So Bob, what really makes it such an important thing to business? And when we are looking at it, say in the context of the situation that we're all dealing with, how do the two kind of integrate, or how does value stream management kind of impact? Well, actually, I should say, how does COVID-19 impact value stream management? What changes when we have this situation now that's so in flux?
Well, I saw a great post on LinkedIn the other day that was who led the digital transformation of your company, and the choices were A, CEO, B, CTO, and C, COVID-19. And it was around COVID-19.
The C-suite there.
I think the fact of the matter is that what we've seen is an incredible acceleration of all the trends that have been going on now for the last several years. If we think about the answers to the previous question, value, understanding the value, visibility, having visibility from idea to cash, trust, understanding that everybody's along the chain is getting their job done, and a visibility into where the problems are, where the bottlenecks are, where I can fix things, where I should focus. And those are all the things that value stream management does. Now we take a look at that in the context of today, and there was a great quote that the credit goes to Eric and the CollabNet people, but there was a great quote in their last webinar last week, which was from the Agile Manifesto, which said that the most efficient way of communicating to and within development teams is face-to-face. Well, Houston, we have a problem. That isn't happening anymore. So the problem of visibility, the problem of understanding the stakeholders of the various application development teams, the value streams that are at play. The notion that I might have a two-piece team sitting in a group being a remote autonomous team, which was a trend we talked about a lot. Well, guess what? Now we have autonomous teammates. Mm-hmm. And those teammates are sitting on the other end of the autonomous team. So I've got a second order point of confusion. And now the problem of visibility, the problem of trust, the problem of performance management and understanding the velocity of your value stream, not to mention the obvious effect on how well you're delivering value to the customer, is now behind a very murky wall of distance. So what you have is value stream management is now to software development what things like Slack are to team communication. If I'm going to do software development remotely and I'm going to do it well and I'm going to consistently improve and I don't have a means to communicate, to collaborate, to get the visibility and all the things we talked about, I will fail. And so, you know, it's really moved now from what I believe to be maybe a nice to have, where people would be, yeah, it would be really nice to have that visibility and tie back to those strategic themes of the business. Now, if I'm not doing that, the system is going to go completely off the rails, and I'm going to lose tremendous time in going to market. And time to market, value, customer satisfaction, all those things are related. And if those start to go south, you're going to find yourself way behind. And we're not going to be doing this forever. The virus will come under control, but the legacy of how we work will stay. And I think people are going to be more remote. Talk to the people in Italy, and they said remote work wasn't a thing. Now it is. So their whole way of living and working is going to be different. And value stream management is going to become critical as an underpinning to make sure that we continue to see, to visualize, and deliver the value that is going to make our customers delighted.
Makes sense.
Exactly. And yeah, exactly. And that is why value stream mapping as a first step is so critical, because what it allows you to do is understand that state that I'm in and how can I optimize it to the changes that I'm seeing, right? Because now it's more about, like you said, that visibility and control. I need to be able to establish and expand my layers and perimeters of trust to secure, to make sure that these developed apps are secure, delivered secured in a trusted manner. I need to introduce monitoring and ensure compliance with policies and regulations to make sure that even more so, protect the customer data from value stream delivered apps as well is there. I need to make sure that value is not impacted from that application delivery standpoint, because back to the point that you made, without value stream thinking, organizations lack the customer centricity, and then that essentially fail to give them the ability to respond to the changing needs in the market, especially to the customers. So it's absolutely critical now to be able to continue delivering those digital experiences that customers trust and value.
Yeah, those are all solid points. You know, I look at some of the other things too. Like in this whole thing, the Urban Code culture from where we're at has always been face to face. We've never been a work from home company. We call it high bandwidth communication, right? It's come meet me over here, and we're gonna figure out this design, or we're gonna figure out how we're gonna implement the solution. As a product manager, I already see our teams have been rallied around value stream for about a year and a half now, but recently it's really hit home, right? When we go to our stand-ups day to day, and people are talking about what they're working on, where they're hung up at, one of the things that's been great about value stream even prior to COVID is that we already knew going in what people were working on. We already knew who was hung up or where they were hung up. And you think about the different types of personalities and the cultures that are there. Sometimes it's hard to ask for help, especially in a competitive development environment. When you're trying to design bleeding edge things, it's hard to say, hey, I don't know, or I'm stuck here, or I'm blocked by some other part of the business. So now we have that, right? We're coming into these meetings already knowing where people are at. We're able to easily identify work that's being held up. We're communicating at a level that we've never had, better than we ever have before, because it's all transparent. And at some point, it kind of takes that stress off of you, because everybody's in kind of the fight together. They're in the same conversation of hey, these are our deliverables for the sprint. These are the deliverables for this release. It's very well articulated, and we know exactly who could be struggling when. And again, it's very much not to point people out and say, hey, why is this dragging behind, but to lift that person up and say, let us help you get you where you need to be, right? To us, this is proven, I think, justified when kind of, I think it was Bob that said, maybe some people will just feel like value streams are nice to have and not a need to have. And this moment, I think, has kind of been the big thing that swung it all the way around, and it goes, man, what would we do without this, right? If my whole option was just to log into something like Jira and go, hey, what's in the backlog? Where is it moving? Okay, but as a product manager, I got still commitments to 2 big releases coming up in June, right? I need to be able to turn around and say to our leadership, I have to make a commitment on what will be delivered. And so we know we're going to take a hit in productivity, right? Because it's new for everybody. At least for our staff, this whole working remote thing is very new. So we know we'll take some hit, but what is that hit? What's that impact to the business? How can I communicate? If we're going to slip on a feature, what is it? And then how from a management perspective, do I know what the right call is there? If something's going to fall out, can I slip something else back in? What feature might we have to, pull away from if other things are a necessity? But now we have that data. We get that data in real time, which is something that probably would have taken 4 or 5 different meetings with leadership to sit down and go, well, okay, if we can't actually deliver that thing. But now people can just log in and go, yeah, that's clearly not going to make it, and here's why. But on the other side of that is we've got the data to go, okay, well, we've got this much wiggle room. What else can we do, right? Can we take the time that we might have missed and put it into documentation? Can we put it into testing? Can we put it into other areas? So for us, it's been a really cool proof working point.
That's go ahead.
Well, I was listening to the discussion. There's one of the things that value stream management is very important in terms of what it provides is governance and compliance. Mm-hmm. And we've mentioned it. It certainly has been brought up. But I saw a survey done by Gartner, I believe, that was talking about the average number of compliance and governance matters that loom over of a release is an average number of 3 or so. And these are things that, whether they're industry-oriented compliance like a HIPAA or a Sarbanes-Oxley or something of that nature, or normal best practice governance kinds of things like just, best practices in terms of integrating security or accessibility. When I go remote and I have that second order of distance, establishing those guidelines and making sure those things don't fall off is critical. I am going to lose productivity and things are going to slow down, and I'm going to get used to even the simple things like making sure my VPN stays up. But once I start to actually do the development, if I miss on those compliance steps or those governance gates, that's a real problem. And if I, as an organization, I worry a lot about that and I start to pull back and want to have compliance and governance be something that, is more of a central function, I'm now actually performing a mortal sin on software, on the transformation of software development. So I have to fall forward. I have to move forward and establish adaptive governance and get governance out in the product teams and apply the visibility and capabilities we're talking about with value stream management to make sure that doesn't fall behind. Because I could still deliver fast, I could still deliver on time, and I could miss my compliance issues. And the best thing that would happen is I would have a huge delay, and it could get a lot worse, fines and the like. So a very important aspect that I think really brings the must-have notion into value stream management in the world we live in, this new normal.
So do you think that value stream management, the whole concept of it has been, I guess the adoption of it or the embracing of it has been accelerated by the events of the last 4 to 6 weeks or so?
I absolutely do.
Yeah, I definitely, because even it was also coming because one of the trends that we started to see as well was this backlash of folks finding out that their data is being shared, or there are people hacking into data and their data is being exposed. And we're seeing a lot of that. So one of the critical items, and I believe this was just discussed, was when you had that visibility of work, when you have that value stream map, you're able to embed in and make sure you have that visibility and control embedded as part of that value stream, right? And then you can ensure that monitoring and ensure compliance with policies and regulations are there or embedded or core piece of that delivered application. Because that application or that solution is your IP, that's your value, and that has to be protected, not only for the customer, not only for the company, but also for their customers. Again, a customer centricity approach.
All right. So we're talking making sure that projects stay on target. We're talking about making sure that the data stays secure. We're talking about making sure that that the projects are compliant. And it like you said, Eric, it all adds up to this customer centric view of doing business, basically. So yeah, I would have to agree with you guys. We've got I think we've seen value stream management move light years ahead, simply because of what we're dealing with these days. So this new normal, as it were.
It was moving fast already. I mean, if you think about it, you know, Lean, how did Lean take, 20, 30 years to take hold? Agile, maybe, 20 some years, that DevOps, maybe 10. Here we are, a year and a half, 2 years into value stream management, and it's mainstream.
Yeah. I think to your point, Bob, I think a lot of folks are looking at this like, well, how do I get my ROI from that DevOps check I wrote, right? Like we promised the world, and some of us even sitting here on this panelist, right? We said, hey guys, let's go automate all the things, let's test all the things, let's monitor all the things. Here's where the ROI is going to turn around. And legitimately, I think we have people coming back and going, okay, hey, it's been a really good 5-6 year investment. Am I actually delivering faster? Am I getting the better quality that I thought? Am I more secure? Do I have high performing teams? What are they, right? And businesses want to generally answer that. I think it might have been Eric, but we have been doing this for a while. I just, similar to like DevOps or Agile, we didn't necessarily have a name for it. And I think the really cool opportunity here is, businesses in general come back, they look at how they're delivering and working as a company, 2, 3, 4 times a year. But that's not the spirit of DevOps, right? We want that fast feedback.
Exactly.
And that value stream is, can we have this in real time?
Exactly, because a lot of those businesses you talked about are being disrupted. Those businesses want to know, okay, how can I be a disruptor? How can the disrupted be a disruptor, right? Themselves.
So who's in charge of value stream management then? Is it the business office, or is it the DevOps team? Who's responsible for kind of connecting the dots there? Whoever wants to answer that one.
I think it's the business's job to, first we have to do education, right? I don't think people understand what is their value stream. And a value stream doesn't necessarily have to be contained from application or app dev, right? Internally, we could look at like our company's HR and onboarding policy and go, hey, there's a value stream. From the time we hire a new person, they get a laptop, they get all their credentials, they get embedded into the team. That takes time, and there is room for improvement in some of those cycles, right? And so part of it is, I think, is the rest of the business understands what we're trying to do, and then we can start having individual groups, self-sustainable teams, define their own value stream and start having a conversation of how can I make our value stream better? And the best way to get started with doing that is just having that conversation, right? Many teams already today are centralized around some sort of a Kanban board where it's like, all right, the work is to do, in progress, or done. But the reality is there's way more unspoken, unmonitored pockets where that work ends up, whether it's in review or it comes back to design or there's some other handoff. And so just communicating and physically writing it out, where we talk about work, where work ends up with, who it ends up with, is a great model to get that going. And to me personally, I mean, it's one of those things where we say if it's no one's responsibility, or if I should say if it's everyone's responsibility, it's no one's responsibility. I think we have to look at the individual teams and say, what do you think your value stream is? And how do we help you optimize that?
Yes, I think what's happening is you got these individual teams are different organizational silos, and this probably gets to your next question around VSM challenges, right? And they're not coordinated, and so the visibility, the handoff points are not there. And if you think about it, especially for my team, their development value stream was really optimized around delivering more projects, right? While the business and their value stream was more designed around more of a product-centric type of approach. So now this mindset of being able to have IT, the IT value stream, instead of delivering them from more of a systems type of approach, more of an approach that's more aligned to the business, is where it's challenge that is happening right now. And those are basically that fragmentation or that alignment that is needed.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is there's a number of things transforming all at once. And we've talked a lot about the technology and the notion of having a value stream management platform that's providing some capability, but the businesses have been transforming from an organizational sense as well. From the Mick Kirsten projects to products is obviously maybe the catalyst that started that discussion, but it is very real. And as people start to get to assign the visibility of how customers are actually leveraging and enjoying and delighting from the service back into the developers so they can understand their impact. It's not just finishing the project and checking in code. It's understanding whether that product or project or application that they're working on is generating revenue, increasing customer satisfaction scores, reducing costs, some other value to the business. And the person or organizations that are evolving to own that are the ones that really ought to be driving the notion of value stream management, because that's what's going to give them the keys to the kingdom, understanding whether or not they are actually delivering that value, and that's going to be critical. And so those people, that product owner, and we see the rise of the product management, the product line manager, the product manager, whoever that title is, whatever that title is, whoever that person is, those people are emerging as critical components in the delivery of software, and they're going to live in the value stream management platform for a good long while. But the values go all the way down to the practitioners, having value to the handoffs. The KPIs and metrics at the top end, that might be a value, an NPS score. At the bottom end, it might be a flow, a value stream flow of some sort. But every step of the way, those metrics are informing the business and the value stream owners as to what's going on, and all those transformations have now accelerated as we've described. So the time is now to really start to get your handle on these things.
Exactly.
Excellent.
So basically, your strategic objectives, key results, filter down into goals across your teams, across your organizations, to give the full visibility end to end. So every stakeholder understands what their participation in it is in driving that value and achieving that business outcome.
That's a really good point. And I want to real quick just do a quick time check. We're about 33 minutes past the hour. We still have a couple more, but we're right on track. I do want to remind the audience that if you do have a question for any of our panelists, please, you don't have to wait until we get to the question and answer period. Just go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit the question. And we'll try to get to as many as we can near the end of the webinar. But Eric, going back to your point, yeah, as you can see, the next slide, I've got the value stream management challenges listed, or the slide up, so we can discuss that. But I think when we're talking about that kind of each part actually understanding where they fit in the whole value stream management equation and what their value is in the value stream management, I think a lot of organizations are having challenges in just communicating that up and down, so that any point, excuse me, any point in that chain, if you will, they might not understand, well, how does what I do impact this, and how does that more importantly impact the customer experience? So I would posit that communication is actually a huge value stream management challenge.
Communication, collaboration, exactly. I think on the poll, I think organizational silos was ranked very, very high up there as far as an adoption challenge. When you have the organizational silos, then you have fragmented visibility across your development and delivery teams and also different development phases, right? If you have that, then you have difficulty in handoff points, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have difficulty in handoff points. That means that the strategic goals and objectives that were set at the business level do not filter down across, right? And if they don't filter down across, then it becomes siloed again, where to the point that Bob and Steve made, I'm checking in my code, and oh, I got this feature. Okay, all right, I'll just go ahead and code it. I go ahead and check it in. Oh, I got this new package to deploy. Okay. Oh, we did 500 deployments today. Okay, great. What does that really mean to the business? Well, I can't tell you, but we're using cool technologies. Well, that's great, right? Yay. We have the same pipeline as Google. Okay, great. But what does that mean to the business, right? How are you driving and adopting to the revenue streams that my CXO and my counterparts at the executive level need to have, right? Holistically. So that's the critical, because of that, organizational silos, the fragmented visibility, and then you got a lot of the manual processes.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they do automate, it's still not really automated across. And so what happens is you have difficulty identifying the best KPIs to measure value, right? And if that's the case, you have difficulty measure value itself around that. And if that's the case, good luck trying to get budget to start doing that, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it becomes a challenge in that area as far as I need to do this, but what I'm doing now is not working. So how do I make that transition? How do I take these transformations that we're talking about and actually inject value into that play? And so these agile, scaling agile and DevOps transformation actually become transformations that deliver value back to the business and full alignment.
Do you think that also tools play a role in value stream management in actually, giving the organizations the information they need, and are there maybe the lack of tools that are actually kind of hindering the process overall?
I think. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I can answer, but I think I talked enough. Go ahead.
I think there's a ton of tools, right? I think part of the challenge around the tooling is that here's a great example. We did a workshop with a client, and at the end of it, after a couple of months, we look at the data coming from the tools, and it tells them, okay, your lead time and cycle time, they're not great, and they go, we know, we already knew that. So we're confirming with the data a lot of things that they already maybe thought they knew. So the question becomes, so what? So what? What are you going to do with it, right? And I think what we have to do, and one of the big challenges is that how do we start to trust the data? Or more importantly, how do we use the data in such a way that can actually provide value back to the business? And one of the key opportunities we have is to trust the data and start looking at things that we're like tracking, right? We're tracking things like unit tests, code coverage, static analysis, and start to use that in a way that says, hey, well, where do we spend a lot of time that prevents us in other parts of the business from delivering more quickly? Well, we do it every time we go to do a release. There's some kind of change advisory board or some kind of release readiness that we need to go through. How can we start doing things like intelligent gating, where we can say, hey, instead of 4 or 5, 6 different boardroom meetings that are very expensive with a ton of C-level executives, how do we actually start going and say, you know what, they were able to decrease the number of defects that they had, they stayed consistent across quality and code coverage, or extended it. To when it comes down, the last really thing we should give is a vote of confidence. Should we be releasing this software? Does it actually going to help our clients? Is it going to add real value to the industry and to the world? And if we're comfortable with that, great, go push it out there. But to me, that it's the tooling provides all this data, and now we have to learn to trust the data, to use the data, not just let it be like, oh, we thought we were okay at this, what can we do with it? How can we use it? And can we push the space farther? Can we get into AI and machine learning to where we can start looking at trends? So we can not only say, here's your bottleneck in this stage, but here's why it's a bottleneck, right? Things come in batches, they leave in batches. That's a batching bottleneck. So there's a number of different ways that we can actually look at the data and interpret it for everyone, really, and make it less about them to figure out, but more of a prescriptive, here's a solution for you.
Yeah, exactly. You hit it. No, go ahead, and I'll make my point. But I was just going to say, your data is basically taking that data and turning it into intelligence, right?
That's right.
So it's needed to make decisions like, how do I control costs, enhance security, ensure compliance, and basically be able to orchestrate outcomes over just delivering output.
Yeah, I won't reiterate all those same points, but I will. I think there's two main things to me that drive the fundamental challenges. Leveraging what we've just been talking about, the integration capabilities into the tool sets is very important. I found it interesting that in the poll, only 10% of the people cited poorly integrated tool chains, while significantly higher percentages were on things like, I don't have visibility. Guess what? That integration is what gives you that visibility. So if you don't have solid integrations to the various tools, you're going to have holes in your data, and holes in your data is going to conspire against people trusting it. So you have to deal with that, and some might say, well, let's use one tool from start to finish. And gee, wouldn't that be nice if I had one company with one tool and everybody used the same thing? Okay, that certainly solves the integration problem. But how real is it? I don't know. Acquisitions occur from time to time, don't they, Eric? And when they do,
I don't know anything about that. I can't define it.
But everybody has different products. So even if at CollabNet, Eric, you guys had done everything you could to standardize, guess what? Now you've got Vivia, and they probably use different things, but the need to orchestrate across them hasn't changed. Right. So the secret sauce to value stream management is a common data model that allows you to normalize the data from all the different tools. And if your thought is you're going to use one tool, guess what? That's not realistic. So you're going to have to integrate across all those tools. That's, to me, the largest hurdle to overcome for organizations to really dive deeply into value stream management. The other side of it is more of a soft concern from a business, from an organizational point of view. Who owns the budget? Anytime I start to bubble up and provide solutions that cut across multiple organizations, multiple groups, maybe even multiple business units within a structure, the notion of who pays for it starts to become a bigger issue. So as people evolve the organizations, the budget holders are evolving. So those kinds of things are all, complicating the process of making a decision. And now we add remote work. And now we add, that we just disrupted the people that are trying to disrupt their business and said, you're going to all work at home now. Okay, now I've got to have just even the management discussions at a leadership team about how I'm going to evolve the strategic teams of an organization has become more complicated. So if I'm going to tie that to the business and I have these ambiguities in the middle, I really have to step back and say, okay, how do I get my arms around it? How do I make sure I solve the problems of remote work? How do I make sure that I treat very seriously the integrations? And that process can't stop because it's going to get harder, not easier, to deliver software well in this world.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And I would just say maybe instead of integration, we should use the word interoperability, right? Because to your point, it's that layer, right, that enables that bidirectional flow of that work stream data. To give you that intelligence so you could take actionable insights across your value streams. You have visibility,
really
different actions into it. Yep.
Really key. Yep.
Yeah, real quickly too. I think the 10% on the poll was interesting because I think people think they have well integrated pipelines, right? They think about,
Right.
hey, I've got full traceability from code change to delivery. But the reality is the integration is one thing, but the key for value stream is the magics and the relationships of that data, right? And it's not just, hey, I can weave a thread from end to end, but like, how can I start to tie a pull request that a developer is making to the several different issues that might be that pull request is tied to, let's say in Jira or in version 1 or in some other product, and then link that to all of the different unit tests, functional tests, static analysis that was run against those different changes, to the builds, to the deployments. Like that underlying thing is really at the detail. So we have to think about that name, of integration, right? Because we're doing integrations, but it's a relationship thing, and I don't know how we get that across, right? It's really how all those integrations, the underlying metadata, congeals.
Yeah, it's you're right. It's more contextually connected to value. Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. All right. So guys, we are doing a time check. It's 14 minutes to the top of the hour. So I'm actually going to skip over this last one. It was just kind of a closing comments type slide anyway. And I'm going to move on to the question and answer period. And something happened to my slide. I'm not sure what happened, but it did say questions right there on the slide. So we have gotten a ton of really good questions in so far. So I want to make sure that we have enough time to get to as many as we can. So with that, let's go ahead and just dive right on into the questions. And please feel free to just speak up if you have a really good answer for any of these questions. The first one is, what is the difference between value stream management and value stream mapping? And maybe Bob, this is a good one for you.
All right. I think value stream mapping is a small part of what value stream management is. Value stream mapping is, and Eric was describing it earlier, it's the notion of saying, okay, I want to understand, the wait states, where I'm being efficient, where I'm not being efficient, where my bottlenecks are, where things are holding up. So I want to give, a quick flyby over the top. It's like I want that drone to fly over the value stream, and I want it to point out where things are working, where they're not, where the bottlenecks are, where the waste is, where things are happening, so I know where to focus. Once I have that, I kind of have, kind of my overall GPS map of, okay, this is how you're going to get from point A to point B. Value stream management picks up from there and goes, quite a bit further and dives much more deeply into actually orchestrating and managing that value stream, making sure that governance and compliance are adhered to, making sure that I can tie the value of the software being delivered back to the strategic theme that was set up at the original budgeting cycle. Those are not value stream mapping components. Value stream mapping gives me the sense of where things are in that flow, but value stream management allows me to be successful with it all the way through to delivering software. So it's really connecting that heterogeneous management of all the tools involved in delivering software into one entity, one system that gives me all the abilities that one system provides in terms of efficiency, delivery, management, measurement, and allows me to improve. At the end of the day, one of the most important things about value stream management is the notion to continuously improve, get better. And today, with the disruption that we've seen, getting better is going to be the name of the game, and getting better fast. So that's what value stream management allows you to do, is actually provide that kind of success to the whole software development process.
Awesome. Okay, Eric, I think I have one here for you. What have you found are the most effective ways to convince organizations to adopt value stream management?
I think it's interesting. If the organization is already starting a scaling agile or DevOps transformation, then you already are starting to introduce those concepts like value streams, especially if they're adopting or utilizing a scaling agile framework like SAFe, which starts talking about value stream already. So what's nice about that is that you don't have to evangelize and educate them on value streams and how all that fits in together. around that. So management and executives are usually bought in as well. So that's what's very key. You have to have your leadership also bought in that this is not something that's just going to benefit them technically, because they said that we heard that before with agile and DevOps. Now you can start bringing them understanding of how those deliverables can actually, they can get visibility to what those deliverables do and how they align to the strategic objectives that they are measured on, right? The OKRs that they're measured on, and basically how they are delivering and going after those revenue streams that drive the business.
All right. Does anybody have anything they want to add on to that? No? Okay. All right. We have plenty of questions here. In fact, I've got one here for you, Steve, I think would be really great for you to answer. How do we get our internal customers, that's all we have, to see this is useful for the business and want to collaborate better with dev? Sometimes it's, I don't want to change attitude. So how does dev overcome this?
Yeah, this is a lot to unpack, but it's a fantastic question, right? I mean, we're all, and I think that's the challenge we even had internally, was how do we go around to the other groups and say, hey, this is valuable for you to do, right? You know, there is, I like to make the Facebook comparison. We don't pay anything to use Facebook, right? But someone's getting a lot of value out of it, right? And who's that all fold up to? It folds upstream. They're getting our data. And at the end of the day, that's what the business needs, right? The business needs to make good business decisions. They need our data. I'm not coming and putting in and saying, hey, let's do this integrations of your tools because I want to necessarily force you to change. I just want to understand how you're operating today. You may be the high performing team, right? All of the fears that you have about change or we're doing it this way because could be justified. But we need to know that, right? So if I can get how your team works, how your team interacts with other teams, and I can start to compare that data across teams, then I can get a sense and understanding of what works well for the business. What are my high-performing teams? Why does this strategy work for one group and not for another? What's the best decision to make when we're bringing new products to market? What's the best way to organize our teams and communicate? You know, there is value there, but just like Facebook, there has to be value to the end users, right? So we have to be giving them something in return for their data. Facebook gives us the ability to collaborate and talk to other people. In a sense, we give them our data. What are we giving to the end users? We have to be able to provide something of value for them. And so what we've found is, one, smart teams want to get better. They do want to improve. They care about communicating, and they typically want to do the right thing. So if by providing them a value stream, we can make those decisions easier, they have a better way to track and a better way to show the business what they are doing and where they are providing value, it generally becomes a more easier pill to swallow. I think, you know, one of the things that we want to get to with the value stream that I like to use it for is a sense to come over to new teams that are forming and say, here's what we found works best in our organization, so that you can manage up and manage down. But it might not be what's best for you. That's okay. Take your step, do what you think is right. But we're going to monitor and track like we do everything here because that's how business should be run, right? We need the data. For the most part, I think people can get along with that approach.
All right. Anybody have anything to add to that? Right. Okay, great. So here's the next question, and I'm just going to make this, whoever wants to answer it, awesome. I have not heard anyone mention how to calculate waste or time lost in the process. So what are you guys doing to calculate waste or lost time between phases within the SDLC and software delivery lifecycle?
So I can take this one. So in when you do your value stream mapping, especially I'm just utilizing the different ways to go about it, doing it in type of different measurements, but I'm just using the one that Scale Agile uses when they do value stream mapping around it. But they measure percent lead time, percent process time between your process steps, percent CNA. And so what's nice about that is that you're able to do like a current state, and you put your process steps in, and then you start measuring like your lead time, your process time, percent CNA. completion and accuracy. And then you create kind of a future state of where you like to go, utilizing, let's say, if I insert, let's say, testing practices, TPD, or I institute other type of special type of tooling, give me a type of capability. Or I see that, I don't really need to do this extra step. I could remove it. And then what you do there is that you also do a calculation on your lead time and process time for CNA, percent CNA. And then you can start seeing the difference in efficiency that you're hoping to get. And then what's nice about that is being able to implement that current state, that process within your value stream type of tooling or capability platform. And then you're able to see how am I getting toward that goal that I'm trying to reach. So that is one approach that I've seen very successfully with customers that I've dealt with.
I mean, that is the whole point of value stream mapping, is to do exactly that. And, you know, it's a great place to start. And there are tons of consultants that will provide workshops. The three of us, our organizations will do it. There's plenty of people, the Gary Groovers and Mark Hornbeeks of the world, from our perspective, do this kind of thing. And it's a fascinating exercise to sit down and actually talk to people and find out how long it takes them to do various things. And my experience is that it's an incredible light that gets shined on things, that what people think is actually happening is actually not really happening. That, you know, that bringing, you know, particularly when you start to integrate things that are outside of a particular value stream that need to be considered, and security is a great example. You know, code vulnerabilities is a great example, and so you might, you know, everybody's operating very effectively, but then I find out I've got a wait state while the security person who was called at the last minute needs to run their tests and do the vulnerability. So I think it's absolutely the core job of value stream map to do exactly what that question is driven at, and then the rest of it is operating on that data.
I would just say real quick,
super critical for that.
Yeah, I think that what we're really getting at here is what's the cost of delay, right? And to me, there's a couple of ways we can look at that. I think simply being able to look at where work is and know what kind of a value you've assigned to it. So when I talk about value, I'm talking about things like story points even, right? So if we look at a particular stage, let's say it's your design stage or your in progress stage, how many things do you typically have in that stage? How long does certain things hang out in that stage in general? And what is the weight that you have associated with it? When you have that kind of data, you can actually start to do forecasting models. So you could say, hey, on your next sprint or your next release, if you have this many points, here's when you should be done, right? So we can look at weight based on a stage. I think the cost of delay is a real thing that, you know, people want to put a number around that, and I think that's very difficult to do. But I think we'll see the industry start to take a step towards that. But that's how we're trying to look at it, right? It's just look at the data. It should be a machine learning calculation of what comes in, how long things hang out, what weightage did you apply to that, and then be able to carry that forward.
Awesome. All right, guys. I'm sorry, Eric. We've got 2 minutes to the top of the hour. I need to close out the question and answer period. I apologize. I know you got so much more to say, but I do want to thank everybody who did submit questions. And if we didn't get to your questions, I'm very sorry, but please know that these guys are getting a copy of all the questions that come in. So hopefully they'll be able to follow up with you offline and get your question answered. Before we close things out, I did also mention at the top of the hour that we'd be doing a drawing for $350 Amazon gift cards. So let's get that done so we can move on with the rest of our lives here. Our first our first Amazon gift card winner is Amy G. Congratulations, Amy. Our next winner is Carla D. Congratulations, Carla. And our third winner today is Wesley P. Congratulations, Wesley. We'll be following up with you guys offline to get your gift card to you via email. And also do want to remind the audience also that today's discussion was in part based on the ebook that should be sitting there in your email if if you haven't already gotten it. Check it out. It's also on the DevOps.com website. You can always go look for it there. As is today's webinar. So following today's event, you'll be probably in about an hour or so, you should be receiving an email if you want to access the webinar on demand. There will be a link right there that you can access if you missed any of it, or if you just want to watch it again. It's also going to be on the DevOps.com website as well. So you can always go to DevOps.com/webinars, look in the on-demand section, and it will be right there waiting for you. Bob, Steve, Eric, thank you so much for your time. Great conversation as always. Love it when we do these webinars because we always have such a great conversation. So thank you.
A lot of fun.
Thank you. Also want to thank the audience
you.
for joining me today. So this is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy yourselves and stay safe.
Bye, guys.
And stay safe, yes. Thank you.